the girl who dared to speak at the Harvest Festival. The sun rose over the red earth of Luwanda village with a soft golden glow. Smoke drifted from the cooking fires as women prepared cassava and maize for the annual Harvest Festival. Children laughed as they ran between huts, their bare feet kicking up dust. The village was alive with anticipation. This festival was the heartbeat of Luwanda, a time when every family celebrated the abundance of their labor. The air was thick with the scent of roasted yams and freshly pounded millet, but beneath the cheerful bustle, an unspoken tension lingered. The Council of Elders had made their usual decree. Only the men could speak in the gathering that determined how the harvest would be shared and which traditions would be honored. Girls and young women were expected to clap and sing, but never to voice opinions. Nia, a girl of 14 with eyes like polished onyx, had felt this unfairness deep in her chest for as long as she could remember. She had watched her father and uncles make decisions about the village's granaries and ceremonies while her mother whispered to her about patience and obedience. But Nia had a fire that would not be dimmed. She had grown up listening to stories of brave women, women who had whispered secrets in the shadows and yet changed the path of their people. This year, as the festival drums began to echo through the village, Nia made a choice. She would speak. The festival began in the open clearing near the baobab tree. Men gathered in a circle with their staffs and carved stools. Women and children sat behind them in rows. The chief, an elderly man with silver hair and a voice that could command silence, started the ceremony with the usual blessings. He spoke of rain and crops, of ancestors and the spirits of the land. The village elders nodded approvingly at each other. Then the chief asked for comments about the harvest and the upcoming planting season. Nia's heart pounded in her chest. She rose from the crowd, clutching a small notebook her mother had given her, filled with thoughts she had written in secret. A hush fell over the villagers. No girl had ever stood in this place before. The elders exchanged glances. Some frowned, some whispered. Nia swallowed her fear. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as she spoke. She talked about how the harvest should be shared more fairly, how girls and women had ideas that could help the village thrive, how traditions that silenced voices were holding them back. Her words were sharp and honest. The villagers shifted uneasily. Some looked shocked, some angry. The chief raised a hand to silence her, but Nia did not falter. She spoke of hope and change and the need for courage. An elder named Omari, a man known for his stubbornness, stood abruptly. "This is not your place, child," he said. "Girls do not speak in the council. You must sit down." Nia looked at him steadily. "I am a part of this village," she said. "I work in the fields, I tend to the goats, I carry water. I have seen what is needed. Why should my voice not matter?" The tension grew thick. Mothers muttered warnings. Young boys stared wide-eyed. The men's faces hardened, but a few younger men exchanged curious glances. Some nodded slightly, as if thinking what she said might be true. The debate became heated. Some elders accused her of disrespecting tradition. Others quietly admitted that her words had sense. Nia's mother watched from the edge of the circle, her hand trembling, hoping her daughter would not be shamed or driven away. The sun climbed higher, burning the dust into the air. Nia's voice did not weaken. She shared stories she had heard from her grandmother about women who had led villages during famine, who had spoken up and changed the course of their people. The elders murmured among themselves, the council becoming a storm of whispers, scowls, and nods. As the festival went on, an unexpected thing happened. The children of the village began to cheer quietly for Nia. The women leaned forward, clapping softly, emboldened by her courage. Some of the younger men stood and raised their hands in support. The chief's brow furrowed. He was proud of tradition, but even he could not ignore the truth in her words. Nia's final point was clear and simple. "If we all listen to each other, our village will grow stronger," she said. The elders were silent. The villagers waited, holding their breath. No one had ever challenged the council in this way, and no one had ever seen a girl speak with such strength and clarity. Just when it seemed the council might dismiss her entirely, something remarkable occurred. The eldest woman in the village, Mama Asha, who rarely spoke in public, stood slowly. Her voice was quiet but firm. "This child speaks from the heart," she said. "We have ignored our daughters for too long. Perhaps it is time to listen." The men looked at her, then at Nia, then at each other. The festival drums seemed to pulse with anticipation. Something had shifted in the air. A door that had long been closed creaked open. But as Nia returned to her seat, her heart still racing, a sharp voice cut through the crowd. Omari slammed his staff on the ground and shouted, "This is not tradition. You will bring shame upon this festival." Nia froze. Every eye was on her. The crowd held its breath. The chief leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Would the council uphold tradition or embrace the courage of one girl? The drumbeats of the festival seemed to slow as silence fell over the clearing. Omari's words had stung like fire, and for a moment, Nia felt the weight of the entire village pressing down on her small shoulders. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. The dust swirled around her feet, and the children's whispered encouragements felt distant, almost fragile. But then the chief cleared his throat, a sound that drew every eye. His voice, deep and steady, carried across the village. "Omari speaks with conviction," he said. "Yet so too does this girl. Her words are bold. Her heart is clear. Perhaps we must listen." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some men shook their heads, unwilling to bend their understanding of tradition. Others, younger men mostly, exchanged glances as if daring each other to speak. Nia felt her pulse quicken. The air was thick with tension, with hope, with fear. The chief gestured toward her. "Speak again, child. Let us hear fully what you believe." Nia rose, her legs trembling, but her voice did not falter this time. She described the work she and her friends did in the fields, how girls carried half the labor of the village without recognition, how their ideas could improve the harvest and care for the livestock. She spoke of fairness, of wisdom that could come from every corner of Luwanda, and of the strength that blossoms when voices are heard, not silenced. The elders whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads, some nodding with careful consideration. Omari's face was a mask of anger, yet there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He had never been confronted like this. Never had a girl challenged the authority of the council and made sense with her words. He looked at Nia and then at the chief, as if seeking confirmation that he would not be punished for speaking his discontent. The chief remained silent, his gaze fixed on Nia. It was as if the very ground had shifted beneath their feet. Mama Asha stepped closer, her voice rising with quiet authority. "Tradition has its place," she said, "but so does wisdom. We honor our customs, yes, but we honor life more. This child speaks of life, of balance, of the prosperity of Luwanda. We cannot ignore her." There was a ripple of approval from the women in the crowd. Some of them even began clapping softly, nodding to each other. Nia's mother breathed a quiet prayer, holding her hands to her chest. She had worried that her daughter's bravery would bring shame or punishment, but now she saw the seeds of change take root. Omari struck the ground with his staff again, louder this time, and his voice cut like a whip. "This is not the way of our fathers. If we allow this, next the boys will not listen to their elders, and chaos will follow. I will not permit it." His words hung in the air, heavy and forceful. The crowd's murmurs turned to whispers of fear. For a moment, it seemed the festival would descend into conflict, the fragile harmony broken by stubborn adherence to tradition. Nia's eyes scanned the circle of elders. She saw hesitation, curiosity, anger, and respect mixed together. She took a deep breath. "I do not wish to break the village," she said firmly. "I only wish to help it grow stronger. We can honor our fathers and mothers and still listen to our daughters. We can carry tradition and still embrace change. That is not chaos. That is life." Her words carried weight. Some of the younger men stepped closer, nodding in agreement. The women began to murmur their support more openly. The children's faces shone with admiration and hope. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if holding its breath for what would happen next. The chief finally spoke again. "Change comes slowly," he said, "but courage must be recognized. This girl has shown bravery beyond her years. She has reminded us that wisdom is not always measured by age or position. I call upon the council to consider what she has said. Speak now." For a moment, there was silence. Then a younger elder, Ibrahim, rose. He had always been quiet, content to follow the lead of others. But today, inspired by Nia's courage, he spoke. "I have listened to her words. They hold truth. Perhaps we have been blind to the gifts of our daughters. Perhaps it is time to listen." His voice was met with tentative nods from a few other elders. Omari's jaw tightened. He looked ready to speak again, to argue, but something in the chief's steady gaze gave him pause. For the first time, doubt crept into his heart. Could the village endure if they refused the voice of one girl? The festival sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the clearing. The villagers were caught between the old ways and the possibilities of something new. Nia returned to her seat, her heart still racing, but she felt the stirrings of hope. Perhaps the elders would hear. Perhaps the courage of one voice could ripple through the village. But as the drumbeats rose again, signaling the evening rituals, a sudden shout rang out from the edge of the crowd. A stranger, a trader who had come from a distant village, stepped forward with a bundle of unusual seeds in his arms. "These seeds will only grow if you accept new ways," he shouted. The villagers froze. All eyes turned toward him. Nia's heart skipped. What did he mean by new ways? And how would the elders respond to an outsider challenging the village just as she had? The village fell silent as the stranger held up the bundle of seeds. They glinted in the fading sunlight, each one small but full of promise. The trader's eyes darted toward the elders. "These are not ordinary seeds," he said. "They come from the highlands beyond the river. They grow stronger when everyone in the village works together. But they will not flourish if old fears and divisions hold sway. If you cling only to tradition and silence, your people, these seeds will die." The elders murmured among themselves. Some scowled, others leaned forward, curiosity tugging at the edges of their suspicion. Omari's face darkened. "Who is this to tell us what to do?" he demanded. "We have lived long with our ways. We do not need strangers to teach us." Nia stood, her small figure unwavering. "Chief," she said, her voice steady, "listen to him. He brings a gift. And the gift is not just the seeds. It is a lesson that when we work together, when all voices are heard, the village will thrive." The chief's gaze swept across the clearing, landing on Nia, then on the stranger, then on the elders who were still arguing among themselves. The shadows of the baobab stretched long, the air thick with anticipation. For the first time that day, the elders seemed unsure. Some of them exchanged nervous glances. Ibrahim, the young elder who had supported Nia, stepped forward again. "These seeds," he said slowly, "they are a chance to do what has not been done before. Perhaps it is time we try. Perhaps courage and wisdom can come from any heart in this village." Omari's hands tightened into fists at his sides. "You would set aside generations of guidance for a girl's words and a stranger's seeds?" he shouted. But even his voice wavered as he looked at the children, who were now staring at him with wide eyes, their faces shining with excitement and trust in Nia. The women whispered among themselves, nodding. The murmurs spread until the majority of the crowd seemed to lean toward hope rather than fear. Nia felt a rush of warmth. This was it, the moment when one voice could shift the currents of an entire community. She stepped forward, not with anger, not with fear, but with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing she was speaking the truth. "If we plant these seeds together," she said, "we will see the strength of our village. Not just the harvest, but the people, the girls, the boys, the elders, the mothers, the children, all of us. This is not rebellion. This is growth." The chief studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at the elder council, his eyes meeting Omari's with weighty authority. The clearing seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the chief spoke. "If we are to honor our ancestors and yet embrace the future, we must listen, not just to one voice, but to all voices. Let the seeds be planted, and let the words of this girl guide us as we do." A ripple of astonishment passed through the villagers. Omari's face twisted, a storm of fury and disbelief brewing, but he did not argue further. The chief's words were final. Slowly, the elders began to rise and take the seeds from the stranger's bundle. Nia watched as the younger men, some of the older women, and even hesitant elders formed a circle, digging small holes in the red earth, planting each seed with care. Mothers encouraged their daughters to help. Fathers handed spades to their sons. The festival clearing, which had been filled with tension and debate just moments ago, now hummed with quiet purpose. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with shades of amber and purple, Nia felt the eyes of the village on her again. Not with judgment or anger, but with something unfamiliar yet exhilarating, respect. Some of the younger men nodded in approval. Some of the elders whispered agreements. The children clapped quietly, their joy contagious. Even Omari watched, his arms folded, his expression unreadable, yet his hands relaxed slightly as he turned to help a young boy press the soil over a seed. The stranger handed Nia a small seed. "This is yours," he said. "Plant it with care, and it will remind the village of what bravery can achieve." Nia took it carefully and knelt, pressing it gently into the earth. As she straightened, she noticed something remarkable. The seeds around the clearing, newly planted, seemed to catch the last golden light of the sun and glow faintly, as if responding to the courage and hope in the hearts of those who had planted them. Just as the festival began to settle into a rhythm of songs and dancing, a sudden shout erupted from the edge of the clearing. A young boy came running, his small feet kicking up dust. "Water, the stream is rising fast. If we do not act, the seeds will wash away." Panic rippled through the crowd. Villagers scrambled toward the riverbank, men and women calling to one another. Nia felt a jolt of fear. All the work they had done, the courage, the hope, the voices raised for change, might be undone in a single moment. The river's roar grew louder with each passing second. The roar of the river grew louder as villagers ran toward the banks. Water churned over rocks, foaming and frothing as if it too were testing their courage. Nia's heart pounded. She gripped the small seed in her hand, feeling its fragile weight. Around her, men and women shouted directions, forming human chains to carry baskets and tools to protect the newly planted seeds. Children clung to their mothers, wide-eyed, some wailing in fear. The stranger from the highlands shouted over the roar of the water, "Work together. Every hand counts. If you fight the river alone, it will defeat you. But together, you can save your harvest and your hope." Nia dropped to her knees beside a small patch of freshly planted seeds. She pressed her hands into the earth, covering the soil, making sure the water would not wash them away. Mothers and daughters joined her, their hands working alongside hers. Men formed lines to divert the flow, piling sandbags and branches. The chief, standing at the edge, directed with calm authority, ensuring everyone had a task. Even Omari moved swiftly, barking orders and helping young boys steady the fragile soil. Nia felt a strange pride as she watched the village act as one. Their fear was real, but so was their courage. Minutes stretched like hours. The water threatened to breach the banks again and again, and each time the villagers responded with tireless effort. Nia's arms ached, her hands bleeding from the rough soil and splintered branches, but she did not stop. Around her, chants and songs began to rise, songs of the harvest, songs of life, songs that her grandmother had sung. They lifted the spirits of everyone present. The river, once a raging threat, began to slow, diverted by the united hands of the village. Slowly, the seeds remained intact, cradled in the soil they had fought to protect. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the village stepped back from the riverbank. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in deep purple and gold. Villagers leaned on one another, exhausted but triumphant. The chief approached Nia, his face stern but softened by awe. "You have shown us more than bravery," he said. "You have reminded us that courage can come in any form, from any age, from any voice. Today, the village learned a lesson we will not forget." Nia bowed her head, overwhelmed. Her mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face, and embraced her tightly. "You have made us proud," she whispered. Omari approached last, his steps heavy. He looked down at the patch of earth where Nia had planted her seed. Slowly, he nodded. "Perhaps we have been too rigid," he said gruffly. "Perhaps there is wisdom in listening. I will not speak against this again." Nia felt a warmth bloom in her chest. Even the hardest hearts could soften when faced with courage and truth. Around the clearing, villagers began to clean up, to laugh, to sing, to celebrate. The Harvest Festival, once overshadowed by tension, now glowed with a new light. That night, under the bright shimmer of the moon, the villagers gathered around the fire. Nia's seed was carefully marked in the soil near the baobab tree. The stranger from the highlands smiled at her. "One small voice can shift the course of many," he said. "You have proven that today." Nia nodded, looking around at the faces of her friends, her family, and even the elders who had doubted her. "It was not just my voice," she said softly. "It was all of ours. We all dared to speak, to act, to believe." The elders, who had once silenced her, now listened as the children shared their own ideas for the village. The women spoke boldly about managing the granaries and caring for livestock. The men, some still hesitant, nodded along, learning to trust the wisdom that came from every heart. Stories and songs filled the night air, weaving the memory of this day into the very soul of Luwanda. The festival drums beat not just for the harvest, but for courage, for change, and for the bravery of one girl who dared to speak. In the weeks that followed, the seeds sprouted strong and green, a living reminder of that day. Villagers worked side by side, men and women, children and elders, learning that strength grows not from silencing others, but from listening. Nia's voice, once timid and unsure, became a symbol of hope. Mothers taught their daughters that their ideas mattered. Fathers reminded their sons to respect every voice. Even Omari, who had once resisted change, now helped guide discussions in the council, often glancing at Nia with a quiet respect. Years later, people would speak of the girl who dared to speak at the Harvest Festival. They would tell the story by firelight, passing it down from generation to generation. And each time it was told, the lesson remained clear. One voice, brave enough to speak the truth, can awaken a community. One heart unafraid can shift the winds of tradition. Nia's courage had planted more than seeds in the soil. It had planted hope, equality, and the knowledge that change begins when someone dares to speak. And as the moon rose high over the village, casting silver light across the red earth, Nia looked at the young saplings that had grown from her seed. She whispered a quiet promise to herself and to her village. We will grow together. We will rise together. We will listen to each other always. The night was still. The village breathed a peaceful rhythm. And somewhere in the distance, the drums of the Harvest Festival echoed, carrying the story of bravery, courage, and the girl who dared to speak into the hearts of all who would follow. The wind stirred the leaves of the baobab, and for a brief, magical moment, it seemed to whisper back, as if acknowledging that the heart of the village had changed forever. During Luwanda Village's annual Harvest Festival, young Nia dares to challenge a long-standing tradition that silences girls in the council. Her bold words spark fear, anger, and debate among the elders, yet they also ignite hope and courage in the hearts of the villagers. When a sudden crisis threatens the harvest, Nia's bravery unites the community, showing that one courageous voice can inspire change. Through her courage, Nia transforms not only the festival, but the village itself, leaving a lasting legacy of equality, respect, and the power of speaking truth.